Hello there. Did we all enjoy Encanto? My name is Maria Lewis. I'm a best-selling author, screenwriter, and high-key Disney obsessive. So this is truly such an honor for me to welcome our guest today. She is an Academy Award winner, the executive producer of the film you just watched, Encanto. She is Walt Disney Animation's Chief Creative Officer, the writer, director, producer of Frozen 1 and 2, and so many other things. Please welcome Jennifer Lee.
Hi.
I'm not sure if you can see this, but we have a cinema full of people who've just watched the film and are so excited to chat to you, including myself.
They made it so I could see a quick wave of everyone. Hello.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Everyone's waving.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm sorry so much of our lives are virtual still. So it's a virtual hello, but from late at night on Friday. Well, late for me, I'm old, you know. I'm happy to spend my Friday evening with you.
We're so excited to have you join us, and I have about 1,000 questions for you, but I'm going to start. I'm not going to ask you 1,000, so don't stress. But I feel like it's relevant to start with Encanto. And I think oftentimes when people think Disney animation, it's big scale and scope and globe trotting. And one of the things that I found so fascinating about Encanto was that it really was one location. A magical location, sure, but still one location. And I was wondering, when you were shepherding this project through development, was that one location setting, was that something that was challenging from a narrative perspective, or alternatively, did that open up a lot of storytelling possibilities?
Yeah, for us, actually, it was just exciting. I mean, obviously, we knew it's a magical house, so like, you know, there's and the fact that we were going to have rooms that they're bigger on the inside than the entire house is on the outside. Our imaginations went wild. But I think, you know, we took a lot of inspiration from musical storytelling on stage, where you have limited sets and you really understand the power of a musical is its emotional storytelling. And we had Lynn and we had a whole family. So for us, I don't think we were ever concerned about it as much as it was really fun to do that. It was really, we had one of the biggest families we've ever put on screen, and you get to know them, and I think that's important. And the house, I always felt like I was going to different places on an adventure anyway, but it was part of what made it feel very special to us.
Did you have a favorite family member, someone that you in particular really connected with?
You know, I I hate to say it because this might be unfair, but I relate to Bruno so much. So I really do. I have a real affinity for Bruno. And the first time I saw Bruno animated, I actually got emotional. I didn't expect to feel such immediate compassion for him because he was built as someone you might fear before you meet him. And his love for his family, despite what feeling like he had to leave and what he was willing to go through, I think was one of the most emotional things for me. And he's funny. So
And he has the best
but don't
song.
tell Mirabelle. I love her too. It's more just you asked who I relate to. So yeah.
I feel like it's one of those things after you see this film, it will be like a week later and you guys will just find yourselves humming like, we don't talk about Bruno, no, no. It's very catchy. Now, the short that played before this, Far From the Tree, I think has an incredible through line with Encanto. They are such a specific and intentional pairing. And I think one of the things that's so great about Disney animated features is that there is this duality, you know, something that's accessible for kids on one level, and then something that's also there for parents and adults that they can get as well. And I was wondering what you and the Encanto team thought was so compelling about both the short and the feature, dissecting the rules and the shortcomings and often sometimes the harshness of our parents and elders. You know, we're always told like the parents always right. Kids, that's true, just FYI. But I loved that both of those two stories really kind of cut through that. And I was wondering what you guys thought was so compelling about that idea as a story.
Well, I think it's such a significant part of family life and multiple generations of families together. And you know, particularly was, I will say what was quite interesting is Far from the Tree and Encanto actually started very independent. The pairing of them really came about organically because of that, and really because Encanto has a very playful, you know, musical, joyous, bright kind of approach, and there's a poetic approach to Far from the Tree, but they're both fearless in how they're willing to look at something as very real. The parents or grandparents have struggled and gone through traumas and want to do better for their families. And that is so beautiful to me and so emotional. And the way Abuela's story unfolds, and saving her story all the way until the end, into Act 3. It's an Act 3 we've never done before like this. I found it resonated with so many people, understanding the responsibility they feel to the older generation, but also they can be part of healing their wounds, and acknowledging those wounds. And, you know, I'll say with animation at Disney is we don't, as a writer, I can say this, we don't write for kids. I have a lot of people assume that we write because it's family friendly films, but we write with very complex themes, and we have very in-depth conversations about our real life authentic experiences. We don't exclude children. I think that's the big part. And children reach up. They don't need to be mirrored to as much as they need to be inspired. And so we find that what we love is children of all ages get something out of it. And then as they grow and return to it, they look at it at different levels. And both films did that. So I think that was really it for us to say, they're not afraid to go there. And the number of people who relate to that story, that were just coming up to us about it really meant a lot.
I had the pleasure to visit Disney Animation during the final stages of Moana, which was personally and culturally like such a high point of my life. And I know how much that film meant to Polynesian girls, boys, cousins, elders, uncles, Usos, everyone. And I was wondering, seeing the impact that film had, did that make the idea of pursuing a film that highlighted and spotlighted Latina culture and Latina talent feel so much more vital?
That's a great question. You know, I love that, because I really think you're right. Moana was the beginning of a lot for us. And I think a part of it was, you know, we had I won't say veterans, also seasoned. Veteran sounds different. It's seasoned filmmakers who were part of Disney legacy for a long time. And we had all their expertise, but they did something very different with the Oceanic Trust, the Story Trust, which is the collaboration with folks from the region, artists, musicians, cultural experts, to be at the table to help build that film, to have ownership. And then we hadn't done it quite like that before. And that introduced us to talents we may never have known. I got to work on it for a while early, before Frozen, for a couple months. And I learned so much, and it had a profound, particularly about oral storytelling, but had a profound effect on me as a storyteller. And, you know, when I took this role as CCO, one of the first things I said is, I want us to tell the stories of the world, but by the people of the world. And that's a big challenge when, you know, you're from a small studio in Los Angeles. But so in an interesting way, I think Encanto was an evolution, and we're continuing to evolve. Like Lynn and Jared had worked together. They wanted to do something in South America, and Byron, but the number one thing they said right away is, we want not just collaborators, but the folks leading, writing, directing with us, music, the composer, like everyone, that it's at the main helm, not just in the room. And so they expanded that in Encanto, and then, you know, we're continuing to do that. So it really feels like it was I mean, no pun intended, was the beginning of a wave of great change for us that I'm so happy about.
Yeah, if you do want to check out some of the work of the Oceanic Story Trust and how that shaped Moana, we do have it downstairs in the Disney exhibition, The Magic of Animation.
Oh, cool.
Plug, plug, plug. I want to pivot slightly away from Encanto for a second, and I'm sure people read your stats back at you all the time, so I hate to do that, but you know, you were the first woman to direct an animated feature at Disney and the first woman to direct a film that crossed $1 billion at the box office. And oftentimes being the first through the door can be really tough. You know, it can be sometimes more beneficial to be the second or the third through the door. And I was wondering, I know female mentorship is incredibly important to you. And I was curious about what was something that you are pursuing in a leadership role at Disney that would actively make it more possible for more women to break through that metaphorical and literal door?
I think, you know, what's amazing is, you know, for me, I'll just say, you know, I wasn't only, you know, the first female director of Disney animated film, which I will say I didn't know about that stat till Frozen was actually coming out. So I'm kind of glad. So I was making the story. I actually didn't know. But I did know that when I got there, I was also the only woman writer when I was there on Wreck-It Ralph. There weren't any other women writers in the studio. So then, and there was one other woman who was directing Prep and Landing, and then it was all men. And it was overwhelming. And we talked quite a bit about talent. And I do say, I'm starting to go to things I'm beginning to say, but I think they're my true norths, which are talent is universal, but access is not. So immediately saying, we got to find the talent. We have to create the access. And so just spreading our reach out more. And I always say it's not or, it's more and who do we add to the studio? And we're evolving, we're growing thanks to Disney Plus. We're adding even more projects. But you know, for me today, I believe I'm working with 5 other female writers now in just this short period of time. More than half the writers are women. I think right now, and it evolves because the writers are more contracted, so they come and go at different stages. But it's the best part, and I will say of those 5 women directors, 4 are women of color. The expansion of all kinds of diversity in our studio has exploded and should and continue. The best thing of all, I have to say, is when you experience, for me, having been in what we call our story trust, which is the directors and writers in the studio come together periodically to give notes to the filmmakers on their projects. And the rooms now, by being the most diverse rooms we've ever had, also have the best notes we've ever had. It's points of view that are various, distinctive, different, unique, additive to one another. People are listening differently. There's not a repetition of the same kind of note. That level of sort of explosion of ideas and the leaps the films are able to make, I think are directly connected to those rooms. They just sort of prove themselves. But we're early on in that in some ways. So I feel like I'm still learning every day. So we'll keep evolving.
I love that. I think evolution is the key, you know, never to be satisfied with the present and to always be looking towards the future. I think there's often this narrative that gets pushed that for you to be successful at something, you need to have been doing it since you're a fetus or doing it in utero or whatever. You need to be like a 5-year-old wonderkin or something. And one of the things I find so fascinating about your career is in your 30s, you went back to university and started pursuing screenwriting. And in your 40s, you became a game changer, et cetera, et cetera. And I was curious if you had any advice for people out there who might be not 5-year-old wonderkins or fetuses considering becoming, you know, world-changing scientists or something. What would your advice be to those people who are maybe thinking of pursuing a professional love as adults?
Well, that's great. I mean, if it helps, is I was a 5-year-old disheveled mess. So I was a creative kid who couldn't sit still and focus and had too many interests and no sense of my mom would say the jack of all trade, master of none kind of kid. You know, I was too curious. And I do feel for those kids, because I do think, to your point, there is a misconception that you have to have certain things figured out in order to achieve in life, and therefore some people give up or they don't try because they haven't, you know, figured things out by 21 or by 25. My idol was doing this. And I think the key for me was just, I was always trying, always learning, always, I was hungry for and restless creatively. And as it was okay that I had to take my 20s to mature. It was just, some people were mature at 21, I was not. And, you know, make some weird videos behind bands in Brooklyn and write bad poetry. And, you know, it's okay, because then things start to fall away that don't matter, and then things become sharper. And if you pay attention, I think it's a clue. But the key to that, though, is once you find the thing, is just, it's putting in the work. And everyone says that cliche, but what it really means is giving it your best, failing, and listening and learning from the failure and doing it again. And each time, never doing it thinking you're going to be as good as you could ever be or as good as anyone you admire. It's that you want to keep going on the journey. And I can't stress that enough. And it's those who don't give up, who persevere, who don't think their work is precious. It's those who do that I think do find the right place for them eventually. I wish it were easy. It's not. Maybe it's easy for those who are the prodigies. I've never lived that life, but good for them.
I hope they're
but
doing
there's
well.
hope for the rest of us, I guess, is the thing.
Congrats, all the prodigies out there. Hope you're doing really well. Your commencement address for the class of 2014, sorry to go, bit of a throwback here. I go Alma Mater at the University of New Hampshire is something that I go back to all the time. It's like my hype up motivational TED talk. And in that, you talk about being enough, knowing that you are enough creatively, professionally, personally, and that you can be enough to pursue your dreams. And I think that's something that Mirabel really struggles with in Encanto. And I was curious about how important you thought it was for girls, especially young brown women, to see that kind of arc on screen as she resolves to believe in herself as she is, rather than something that she has to change.
I think it's huge. You know, I think the truth is, sadly, it's getting harder and harder, particularly with social media. You hear and the effect it has on young children and teenagers about their self-worth. You see sort of a polished version of a life that's not real, but what it makes you feel inadequate, and particularly you hear even more of people of color and that feeling of not being enough, and saying, you know, what makes Mirabel so extraordinary to me is, in a family of gifts, her greatest gift is just who she is. And it's so, and that power she has, where her family is stuck in the boxes of their gift, of what seems like, you know, they're stuck, and she's the one who can free them. And that perspective of of how you see the world, who you are exactly, matters. And it's really hard, I think, to see through that. And I'll actually mention a line. It's actually from something I did in live action, which is The Wrinkle in Time, where she says, do you realize the billions and trillions of events that had to occur in the universe to make you exactly who you are? And I always love that line, because I think people constantly diminish themselves. And Mirabel is such an evocative expression of how you don't need to, and you don't do, just, you are enough. She's more than enough. I mean, clearly. So it's just, but it does it in such a, I feel like, relatable way. It's not hokey to me. It's genuine. You literally see her sort it out. So I really love her for that.
And for those who might be wanting to check that film out, that is A Wrinkle in Time, directed by Ava DuVernay, with a script by Jennifer Lee, based on the groundbreaking sci-fi novel of the same name. That is unfortunately all we have time for, and I know you're such a busy woman, so I really, truly appreciate you giving us some of your hours and being so generous with your answers and letting us really appreciate your art and your insights.
Well, thank you so much, Maria, and thank you everyone for coming out for the film. And I wish I was there in person someday.
Encanto too. Encanto too. Thank you so much, Jennifer Lee.
Cheers. Thank you.